The Lost in Transition podcast is brought to you by LB Endurance Coaching. Let LB Endurance turn you into a legit badass. Learn more today at lbendurance.com.
So we're swimming. I was having a bad swim. Dad jumped off the boat at an island and said to Mum, "Remember, whatever she says, agree with her." And I stopped and said, "I'm swimming like a donkey, haven't I?" Meaning for somebody to go, "No, you're swimming all right." And my mum just turned around and went, "Yeah, you're swimming like a donkey."
Welcome to the Lost in Transition podcast. I'm your host, Chris Gerard, joined right now by Sam the studio cat, who wants to get on the mic. We'll have some human guests coming up here as well. Joined by Lana Burrell and Derek Tingle, as always. Plus, Blake Ogle makes an appearance back on the show because we're talking about marathon swimming with his friend Colleen Blair, the Scottish marathon swimmer. Colleen is a really, really accomplished marathon swimmer. She swam the English Channel at age 20. She was the youngest person to swim the channel that year. She completed swimming's Triple Crown of open water racing, and just recently became the first person ever to swim across the Minch. If you don't know where that is in the world, well, stay tuned. That is a very good story of her ocean swim between the Outer Hebrides and the Scottish mainland, and she's got a lovely Scottish accent as well. Glad to have her on the show. In the meantime, you can subscribe to the show via iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, TuneIn Radio, YouTube, and also we post up on Facebook. You can go to losttransition.com for all the latest, and follow us on social media so you don't miss a thing. Without further ado, we talk to Colleen Blair next on the Lost in Transition podcast. Colleen Blair has been marathon swimming for over 30 years. She crossed the English Channel in 1998 at age 20 and completed the Triple Crown of open water swimming in 2014. Earlier this year, she became the first person ever to swim across the Minch without a wetsuit, a 25-mile ocean swim between the Outer Hebrides and the Scottish mainland. She is also a two-time finisher of the Scar Race in the American Southwest. Colleen, glad to have you here on Lost in Transition.
Hiya.
Your swim background started at a very, very young age. I was reading online a little bit. I believe you were 7 when you were got into your first race in your hometown there in Scotland, and you were the youngest by quite a bit in that race.
Yeah, I did it with my dad, so yeah, he swam alongside me. In Dundee, where I'm from, there's a railway bridge and a road bridge, and they're 1 mile apart, so you swim down the river with the tide.
That's always nice to have the tide at your back, at least. I'm sure that has not always been the case with some of these swims that we'll be talking about here. The big thing, obviously, is a lot of stuff that's been accomplished this year, including crossing the Minch, which we'll also get to in a little bit here. As you started swimming throughout your teenage years, and then, of course, bring us up to that English Channel swim at age 20, you were the youngest person to swim the Channel that year. What on earth possessed you to do that? Where did you kind of start, building up to where something like crossing the English Channel was on the horizon for you?
I think I'm probably a bit different from most people because a lot of my friends have swam the Channel and I'm in that community, so it's almost a normal thing to just go and do. My sister swam the Channel when she was 18, so everybody just kind of presumed that I would just go on and do it. I tried the North Channel, Ireland to Scotland, when I was 18 but didn't finish it, so went back and did the English Channel first when I was 20. So it was almost back to the North Channel.
It's amazing you almost had that pressure on you with your sister doing it first, and 18 and 20. I'm not sure the average age of a Channel swimmer, but I'd have to guess, was she the youngest the year that she did it as well?
No, she wasn't the youngest. She can
goodness.
do it from 16 now, but she wasn't the youngest that year.
How many people have swam the Channel successfully? Is it just over 1,000? Am I remember that correctly? Something like that?
I think it's more than that now because there is a lot busier.
Right. They limit the number per year, don't they?
It depends on how many boats there are and the tides and the weather.
Well, that's something that a lot of people don't think about in the States here, is that the English Channel is one of the busiest shipping lanes in the world, and just the logistics of getting across can be quite challenging. When you crossed it back in 1998, were things a little bit less busy through there at that point? What did the preparation for that race look like?
I think it was a lot different because there wasn't so much, there was no social media, there wasn't as many mobile phones. So when we started, me and my sister, when we did our swims, my mum couldn't find out what we were doing or where we were doing because she stays on shore. So that made it a lot more difficult than it is now. Contacting your pilot and booking your boats was very different then than what it is now because the communication was so different. The channel was just as busy, but there was a lot less swimmers and a lot less boats taking swimmers across then.
The English Channel is a very cold swim, as is just about everything that you do. What are typical temps crossing the English Channel?
I think for Fahrenheit, I think it's about 64, 65 degrees, so it's not too bad.
Which is warmer than a lot of stuff that you do, for sure. I know it's a lot of people that I know that have looked into doing the channel here in the States see it as cold, but I'm sure it gets far worse there. Where do you do a lot of your training outdoors? Where's some of the best spots that you have to swim where you're at right now?
I live beside Loch Tay, which is a 15-mile long loch that doesn't go much above 12 degrees centigrade, so what's that, low 50s?
Low 50s.
So that's what I'm used to training in, so nothing... I'm lucky that way because I don't feel the cold because that's what I train in. I'm in Orkney just now with work and the sea's sitting about the same thing. So again, that's just what I'm used to.
It stays pretty consistent there all the time, and that, like you say, that probably gives you a big advantage because when you go do swims elsewhere, I mean, there's really probably nothing that can seem cold at that point.
Yeah, it's a bit harder. Like the swim I did in Arizona in April, I couldn't train leading up to it because the loch temperature was 5 degrees centigrade here, so then we can't actually train during the winter. We can only swim in the summer, and the top temperatures are July and August.
So, Colleen, do you ever train in a swimming pool, or do you do most of your training outside?
Preferably outside, but in the winter, I sometimes have to give in and go into the pool.
Right, and that's where it's warm and there's a lot of turning. I know it's not my favorite place to train anymore.
No.
I know that the English Channel wasn't one that was really on your radar that you did just because of your sister, but the North Channel is the one that kind of got you on the radar, especially with a lot of people here in the States. The funny story was I piloted for Colleen at the Scar Swims for 3 of them when I went out with Jamie Ann, and I sent her this email when Kent, the race director, had asked me to pilot for her, and I was just asking, just basic like, hey, what's your background? Have you done any of this stuff before? Not knowing that it's going to be. And then a couple of friends of mine that have done channel swims, I told them who I was going for, and they all just freaked out. And they was like, you've got to check out, she's on the webpage of the North Channel Swim. Can you talk a little bit about that swim when you went back and did it successfully the second time and what it meant to you, and explain, because most people that will be listening to this don't know a lot about the North Channel. Between Ireland and Scotland is, I believe, still there's less than 50 people that have successfully completed that swim.
Yeah, I think there's about 40 people now done it. I was the 9th person to have done it. I tried it when I was 18 and it didn't work out. It was, and probably still is, one of the hardest to do. It's cold. This year went up to 14 degrees centigrade, but that's warm for it. It's full of jellyfish in the summer. The weather conditions can be quite poor. I sat for 2.5 years before I got to swim, training, and then not getting to go because the weather was too bad. The year I swam, I had packed all my kit away. It was September and thought the swim was off yet another year. And then I got a phone call at 2 o'clock in the afternoon to ask, could I get to Belfast by 6 o'clock the next morning? So we jumped in the cars. I managed to get my boss to cover for me at the pool that I worked at, and we jumped and got the last ferry back across to Ireland, and we were in the water by 6 o'clock the next morning. I started at a different course. At that point, courses were still getting tried out. Different options were being tried because there was so few people that have swam it. So I started at the other side of Belfast Loch from everybody else. The thought was the tide would help us, but unfortunately the tide didn't really help us, so no one else has started from that point, and probably nobody else will start from that point. For me, it was a swim I've always wanted to do. I loved it from start to finish. It was just me in my happy place, and I finished underneath Port Patrick Lighthouse in the pitch black, in the jellyfish, but I couldn't have been happier.
So tell us, Colleen, how far is that swim, and what was your time? How long were you in the water?
It's about 23 miles, and I was, now I'm having to think, 15 hours, 24 minutes was my time. So yeah, not the fastest, but I made it across, and yeah, I was just so happy just to do it.
So let's talk jellyfish. How do you even begin to deal with that? Like you're in I can't even fathom. How do you deal with swimming through like jellyfish and not like just throwing in the towel and going, this is stupid. I'm not doing this shit anymore.
I used to be, after the first time I was scared of jellyfish, and I did a swim 2 years before that I got pulled because I got washed off course because of the currents. But to me, that swim was a success because I deliberately swam through 3 jellyfish and survived. And I think it's more the fear of being stung by them than actually the sting, but they can be dangerous. That swim, a lot of them are huge, so you're actually able to dodge them. If you spot them early enough, you can flip onto your side, you can scull. So part of it is trying to dodge the jellyfish and get as stung as little as you possibly can. When the sun goes down and it's dark, you don't have much of a choice. There's new stuff coming out, this jellyfish lotion that you put on that's supposed to help the stings. It helps your head. I don't know if it helps revert the stings, but yeah, you just have to deal with it.
Wow.
That kind of mental toughness, I guess, and just acclimatization to those different
that's physical
conditions.
toughness, too. That's way more than mental.
It's toughness on every level. I mean, and that had to help significantly. That crossing of the Minch this year, very first person to do that without a wetsuit. And I was reading that you were stung hundreds of times during that crossing. I know you said that you've gotten to a point where it's not as mentally intimidating as it once was, but do you ever get used to it, or to the point where you don't even notice it, or how does it work to get stung that many times and still be going?
I think the ones I got stung with, probably not as many as that, but there were the little ones that the stings aren't too bad. I got a couple of bad ods, but now if I swim in the river in the loch now, I totally jump if a leaf touches me, and all my friends just laugh at me because I scream and jump like a big girl. But yeah, I jumped in the start of the Minch and all you could see was moon jellyfish, and they don't really hurt when you get stung. They don't really sting you too much unless you hit underneath them, but they're just everywhere. And then there was lots of compass and line mains and other jellyfish within that. And you just have to, normally you guys probably know, you can normally switch off when you're doing long distance things, but you couldn't, and that's when you just had to concentrate and try and dodge the jellyfishes. The plan was to try and get stung as little as possible. My legs probably got hit more than anything else, and that was my plan, was to try and keep my upper body as clear as possible of stings for as long as I could.
Wow. I guess that's making the best of a tricky situation right there. The swim itself, obviously, very tricky. The conditions were pretty rough. I know Colin McLeod was a swimmer that you were with that got separated from his support crew and had to be rescued by the Coast Guard. Were you or your crew aware of his situation during your swim at all, or did you find out about that after the swim?
Colin went missing after I finished. His kayaker came to our boat just as I was swimming back from the finish. So that was as much as it just happened as I was finishing. If it happened before, my crew would have pulled me to look for Colin, so I was probably lucky in the timings. Yeah.
Yeah, the conditions sounded pretty rough. I know that you were fighting the tide on your way out to sea the first time quite a bit. Was it a matter of a couple hours that you made very little progress against it? Yeah, it was. I say it was rough. Like, my observer was sick before we even made it to the start. It was the last bit that we got stuck in tides. I learned earlier on in my career never to look up and never to look behind you, because as soon as you can see land, it never gets any closer and it messes with your head. So I was stuck in the tide for about 5 hours, but was blissfully unaware of it because I hadn't looked up. Thankfully I hadn't, because there was a big lighthouse about 2.5-3 miles in front of me. So it is, again, experience and knowing just not to look up, or it just messes your head up.
So you're swimming, and do you have an idea when you start this, like how long it's going to take? Like you said you're stuck in the current for like 5 hours. Do you think at some point it's like, okay, time keeps passing and passing and passing, and like I should be going somewhere. I should have hit something by now.
Or do you just trust your pilot?
Or do you just trust your pilot to just, tell you what's going on? Or how does I can't even wrap my head around this. This is blowing my mind, really. I'm completely dumbfounded by this.
You have to have trust in your crew. They give you your feeds, they encourage you, they tell you what to do. My kayaker told me to speed up towards the end because they thought the slack tide was going to happen. It didn't happen, so he told me to slow back down. You just have to have your faith in your crew, and they pulled me towards the boat towards the end and asked how I was doing, because I was trying to be the first person to swim the North Minch, and the lighthouse to the north of the lighthouse is the North Minch, and to the south of the lighthouse is the South Minch, and we were stuck at the lighthouse. So I said to my crew that I was suffering and I was really cold, so I just wanted to finish a swim. So we were lucky that we started to go south and they spotted a eddy current which pulled us up to the north, and that was how we got to finish.
Oh,
but
wow.
again, it's just trusting your crew.
For the people that I had a little inside information before the swim, we had talked about it before you did it. And I know what the swim meant to you, but for the people here, I had no idea where it was, and I had to pull it up and look on a map. And I think Chris can probably put that on the website so people can see where this swim is. But your preparation for the Minch was essentially what we did at SCAR, which is 9 mile, or as Kemp promotes it, 9 miles, 9.5, 17, and then a 10K at night over 4 days. But you didn't hit those distances, and you didn't really have a lot of notice ahead of time for this swim, but you had been planning it for a long time. And I think that the beauty of this, of what you did, comes in the build up to it. So could you tell a little bit about the Minch swim and how it came about and how you did it?
Yeah, about 20 years ago at college, a friend of mine is from the Isle of Lewis, which is the island on the Hebrides that I swam from. And he jokingly said, Spatch was like, why don't you swim and see me one day? I parked the idea, and then as years have gone on, that little light bulb moment came on to say, yeah, I actually quite fancy doing it. Colin, who unfortunately didn't finish the swim, he did it as part of a relay on the ferry route a few years ago, all in wetsuits, and that made me think, yes, this swim is possible. So I'd organised through the National Lifeboat Association. They were going to provide the safety cover if I raised money for them, and that was all organised 3-4 years ago. Lots of publicity, which I normally don't do, and unfortunately the wind blew up, and because of where this swim is, there's nothing past the land. So if there's a storm out at sea, it can last 3-4 days of swell coming in after the storm settles, and that makes the start and finish nearly impossible because it's all just rugged rocks. So unfortunately for the last 2-3 years, I've been withered out each year. This year I couldn't get a boat, so I'd given up on the idea of being able to do it. And luckily, 2 swimmers were trying in a wetsuit. Someone else was trying to get their swimmer across, and the guys in the wetsuits, who are friends of mine, decided they would like me to be the first one to get across, so offered me a boat and kayak with them, and that's how the swim kind of came about. So I had 4.5 weeks notice to get training for 4.5 weeks, and then that was us off. So not the best preparation.
No, but you did it. And the really cool thing was there was a private group on Facebook that Colleen added me to so that we could follow along the journey. And as the conditions got really rough that evening, and I mean, you said when you jumped in and started the swim at the Minch, it was 48-degree Fahrenheit water temp.
Yeah, it was 9 Celsius, so yeah, that'll be about right.
Did it warm up any during that swim?
It went up to 13 was the max it went up to in the middle, and then it dropped back to down at the end.
And what would you say the air temperature was on average for this swim?
The air temperature was about 12 degrees centigrade, 13 degrees centigrade. So the air in the water was about the same in the middle.
Ready to take on that first Ironman, improve your next century ride time, or just build up from a sprint triathlon to your next bucket list event? Let LB Endurance Coaching be your guide on the journey. Head coach Lana Burrow brings her racing experience, coaching acumen, and education to craft a training experience that invigorates and challenges triathletes, cyclists, runners, and swimmers. LB Endurance offers one-on-one coaching, clinics, classes, training camps, and consultation. Certified, insured, and embracing the best of today's technology, Lana will turn you into a legit badass. Visit lbendurance.com to learn more, and like LB
Our
Endurance
thanks again
on
to
Facebook.
Colleen Blair, and we'll look to see some of you local people
really
out
cool
at Bridges
thing
to
was,
Bluffs,
and you talk
Knoxville's
about
open
being
water
mentally
swim this
tough. Colleen
weekend. We'll
is
talk to you
mentally
again
and
soon.
physically
Remember
tough
to
with that,
subscribe,
but
rate,
at the
and
end of the
review
swim, it
on
was
your
kind of
favorite
funny because
podcast
someone
app.
on the
And if
boat
we're
or
not
someone
somewhere
had
that you
put
would
up
like us to
that
be
they
to
didn't think
listen
that
to
you
the
were going to
podcast,
make it, and it
just
wasn't
let
looking
us
good and
know,
all this,
and
we
hit us up
thought,
at
oh, shoot, they
losttransition.com or
only
via
told her
social
that
media,
that
and
would
we'll do what we can to
piss
get
her off
posted
enough
up there.
to push
In
her
the
on to the
meantime,
finish.
like,
Did you
follow,
have any? Did
tweet,
anyone
do
give
all
you
those
any
things on
idea
our social
on the
media,
boat that
and
it was
check
getting
out the
rough,
website
or that you would need to change
losttransition.com, give us
course there at the
suggestions
end to
for
try to make the
upcoming
lighthouse?
guests.
so we can bring their stories to you. We'll talk to you again soon. For Lana Burrell, Derek Tingle, and Blake Ogle, I'm Chris Gerard. And until next time, may all your transitions be smooth.
I'm lucky because my dad's been on most of my swims. I knew what he's like. So, yeah, I just put my trust in them. As I say, they had the discussion with me probably an hour before I finished, and I said I was really cold and just wanted to finish a swim. But the thing with the Facebook post was there's a local TV programme here, The Adventure Show, and we had a film man on the boat, and he was updating Facebook. So when they said I was struggling, it wasn't I was actually struggling, it was I was struggling to move against the tide. So a lot of people thought I was in a bad way and was not going to finish, but actually what it should have been was that we were stuck in the tide. So a lot of people were worried when, I was blissfully unaware, just swimming one arm at a time and keeping going.
So you talked about your dad being on your support crew, and you mentioned earlier that your mom had planned your swims across the channel. So it sounds like this has been a family affair. Could you talk about how your family's been involved and what it's been like to have your dad on your support crew all this time?
Yeah, my dad's been, I would say 99% in the swims, my dad's been beside me. But that's been like that since I was 7-8 years old. It's a bit of a strange one because he knows when I've got asthma as well. So he knows by the way my mouth is when I breathe, if my asthma's good or bad, if I'm working hard enough, if I'm not working hard enough. He probably knows me better than I know me. And I'm really bad if I'm getting tired or something's hurting. Then I swim with a limp just to see if he's paying attention. And he just totally ignores you. And you're just like, oh, he's got me again. So yeah, it is a total special thing with my dad. We have agreement, like the English Channel, I called them all the names under the sun. I just exploded and then apologised about 5 strokes later. I was like, Dad, I'm sorry. But yeah, we have a relationship that whatever's said during the swim, it's fine when we get on land. Mum supports. She's not allowed on my boat. She's been on my boat once and I fell out with her. But she's always there to give me a hug at the end, and she's always there at the start. So Mum is an integral part of my support crew, and she makes sure that my crew's looked after when they're on the boat as well. So yeah, they travel to meet with me to Scar when I met Blake. They travel all my swims with me, and they totally love it as well.
Are they still swimming too? Does your dad go out and swim? Does he do the distance like you do?
No, he's done, when he was younger, he did probably 1-2 mile swims, but he was a backstroker, and he played water polo, but he didn't do the distance stuff that my sister and I did. My mum does a little bit of swimming, has done a couple of outdoor swims, but again, just a 1 mile swims, which is an amazing achievement for her. But yeah, she swims in the pool sometimes.
But your mom does the cold water stuff, correct?
When I enter her into things without telling her and then take her to the race on the day, then yeah.
So back to when you said you were getting ready for the Minch, you only had 4.5 weeks to train. So what did that look like? I mean, we all know you can't cram training. So what kind of a base did you have? And then what did you do for 4.5 weeks to get ready for this?
I am rubbish at training. I love the swims, but I'm not so good at the training front. I also am the only person that does the kind of stuff I do where I live, so I've got to do all my training on my own, which can be hard. So this year wasn't the best training. I was ill over the winter. I went to Lanzarote in the Canary Islands with my mum and dad for my birthday present in March and did about 50 miles in a week, and that was my training for Scar. So then I had that in April with Scar, and then 4.5 weeks before the Minch I got told. So I was hoping a 12-hour swim, but that didn't happen. So I probably did 4 or 5 6-hour swims, and the rest was mental. And I think when swimming that long, you're kind of muscle memory, and it is a mental game as well as a physical game, and you just have to keep going.
Absolutely. Do you do other things besides swimming then? Do you do any other kind of training, or like even just, hiking or other activities to kind of keep you there? And also, do you do anything for your mental prep? How do you keep your mind and soul ready for these kinds of things?
I think because I've grown up doing it, like I did my first long swim when I was 14, I did a 17k swim, and then I did the Loch Ness, which is 23 miles when I was 19, that the mindset's kind of there from a young age, and you just keep on building on that. And again, it's probably the trust with the crew. Even when I just met Blake, you just put your trust in your pilot, and you have one job to do, and that's to make it to the end. And that's your job for that day. Whether it's a good day in the office or a bad day in the office, you just have to keep your arms going one at a time, and that's all you have to think about. So it's possibly we've got an easier job than what the boat pilots have.
so we've talked about these swims and stuff, and I'm trying to wrap my head around the time that goes into this, and you're talking like 6 and 7 hour, 12, 13 hour swims. What does your nutrition look like during the swim? I mean, leading up to it, of course, but also during this, how are you getting your calories? How are you replenishing that during a swim? Just help me. I need to understand this. This is fascinating.
I'm a bit of a control freak when it comes to my feeds, and Blake will probably vouch for this. I have a colour coordinated card, so I've a carbohydrate based drink in clear bottles, and then I've got an electrolyte carb based drink in a yellow bottle. So feed every 45 minutes, and I'd normally go for 2 feeds of clear and then 1 of yellow. When I get my yellow bottle, which is electrolyte carbs, I normally have a couple of jelly babies, which is they're fruit jelly sweets that are quite soft and sugary. So I normally have them with my yellow bottle, and it just repeats like that right the way through the swim. When I was getting cold, about 7-8 hours, I got a hot chocolate and a bar of chocolate, which froze in my mouth. So I just went with my hot chocolate. And then as I got further down and got colder, my kayaker was passing the message to my boat I was getting cold. So they added in a couple of extra hot chocolates. And after about 10 hours, my feeds changed to 30-minute feeds rather than 45.
You're talking to triathletes here. That's the most. She's the most simple plan ever.
I love it.
Every 45 minutes, you hand her a bottle, and at
Could
the
you
third
imagine
one,
though? I'm just imagining hot chocolate.
Yeah,
right now I'm like, oh, that's perfect.
What kind of calorie intake are you looking at on that? Like,
I think that the clear bottles I get 3 feeds out of on average, and I think there's about 800 calories in one of those bottles.
So you're getting...
That's pretty rich stuff. Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Yeah, I'm thinking, I mean, that's got to be a huge fueling load.
Well, just think of keeping warm.
Right,
you know?
the keeping warm.
Right.
I mean, I get out of a 70-degree pool and I want to eat everything in sight, and I've only been in it for 45 minutes.
Derek has no body fat either. So.
I'll say I'm a bit of a chunky monkey, so it's all right.
So let's talk about that. I mean, because I think people, when they think of, athletes, they think, oh, they're supposed to be lean, mean, but we know to stay warm in cold water, body fat is probably the easiest to obtain and easiest to use insulation you can have. So does your weight change during the year as you prepare for swims?
No, generally I start losing weight because I'm training more. But I've always been slightly bigger, and it is what it is. And I'm just used to the cold, and that probably helps as well.
Yeah, in this case, it's an advantage.
Possibly.
Now, you did the Triple Crown, which is the English Channel, the Catalina Channel, and then the swim around Manhattan Island. But you also have a couple of other swims outside the Minch swim, which you were the first person to achieve.
Yeah, there's a few.
Okay, do you mind to talk about those and kind of brag a little bit here?
I'm not good at the bragging bit. The Pentland Firth I'm in the Orkney Islands, so when you look at Scotland, it's the small group of islands just off of the top left-hand tip of Scotland. There was a TV programme here made by one of my friends who tried to do it. It was famous in World War II for ships crashing because of the way the currents whip around the islands. They create whirlpools all the way across it. So one of our friends tried to do it. Somebody else tried to do it behind his back because he wanted to be the first one to do it. And then he asked us all to try and be the first ones before the swimmer. So it was about 6 of us had it booked. I went early because I don't mind the cold, and I went a longer course because it gave us more chance of finishing. But it was only 9 miles, so I swam from the Isle of Hoy across to the mainland. And that was another first. But that swim was really complicated and technical again. It was a local fisherman, like my Minch swim, it was a local fisherman. We met Robert the morning of my swim, and I just had to jump in and trust that he would get me across. And all the way across, they were telling me to speed up, slow down, speed up, slow down. Because of the way the tides and the currents rip through there, we had to be at set points at exact times to actually make it across. So that's probably one of my more fun ones. And I was the first to do that one.
Has there been anyone that's repeated it since you?
There has been a couple people. They've done different routes and a shorter route. If you're faster, the shorter route's probably the easier and quickest one. I'm not the fastest, so I went for the one that gave me the most chance of finishing. As I say, I'm up there just now, and the locals have said that somebody's done it this summer in a wetsuit, so there are now swimmers getting across.
in the Triple Crown, we mentioned obviously English Channel and swim around Manhattan, and of course Catalina Channel as well. Catalina's water is quite a bit warmer, correct?
It is a good bit warmer. I went in October in the hope that it would be slightly cooler than what it was in the summer.
I was about to say, you've got the experience, a wealth of experience in cool water, but I have to imagine going somewhere, I mean, thankfully that's not the warmest water in the world, but I can only imagine swimming in the tropics would probably be horrible. It would seem horrible to swim in water that was 80 degrees plus.
Yeah, it is. Again, it's back down to the feeds, because before then I wouldn't have had electrolytes because it's that cold. You don't really need them in the swims here. So I added them into my feeds, and we just changed and tweaked how things would work. But yeah, again, it's a mental thing, and you just have to deal with it and just keep going.
Now, the Catalina Channel, for people who don't know, you start that one at night, usually around 11:30 or midnight, and it's known for wildlife. When we were at Scar, there was nothing in the water but swimmers.
You're talking about things wilder than jellyfish?
Yeah. What did you see anything at Catalina? And on any of your swims, have you had any encounters with wildlife? And what do you do? Like, do you prepare going in that you know that it's going to be there, or do you just kind of just block it out of your mind?
Catalina was a bit of a funny one, because I met Kevin Murphy, who's the king of the channel, who's done the English Channel the most times. He's a friend of mine. I met him at a conference a few weeks before, and he was telling a story of when he did Catalina and a dolphin came up underneath him in the dark, and he just saw the fin, and the Jaws theme tune was stuck in his head for the rest of the swim. And I was just like, oh no, that's all that's going to be stuck in my head during the swim. But luckily there was another Scottish swimmer swimming the day before me, and we ended up going to La Jolla for a swim and met up with Dan before we went. And Dan took us swimming at La Jolla, and we got to swim in the ocean, and it kind of helped my head, because you got to see all the fish, you got to see everything that you were swimming in, and that just kind of calmed me down, and I thought, actually, it's not that bad. During my swim, there was seemingly a whale down the side of my kayak, but I didn't see it. There was sea lions. A sea lion went between my feet, and I hit a sea lion, and that was in the dark. But you just have to kind of go into your own, you almost go into a bubble, and you have to switch off from everything that's moving around you and just concentrate on what you're doing, or your mind will take over.
I know we've mentioned the cold quite a bit. I read somewhere that you were looking into or had been doing some ice swimming, and that there's some events that were going on up to 1 kilometer long, basically in the dead of winter, where they would cut out channels in a frozen lake and swim. How in the world did you learn about that? And I mean, it seems like a natural extension, I guess, from what you've done, but how did you get into that?
I've not done any of they've cut the pool out of the ice yet. It's on the to-do list. I have done some ice swimming. One of my friends talked me into going to Ireland to their first ice swimming championships, where it's 1K and under 5 degree centigrade water. They kind of, I won't say they're a bad friend and not a good friend, but they're probably good. Yeah, they're probably good. They know I don't have the brain cell that says stop. And she kind of introduced me to it. And then I did my ice mile, where you swim a mile under 5 degrees as well. So I've done bits and pieces, but this year I was hoping to do more, but I decided to go to Scar in Arizona instead, so I didn't do any. So this winter I might do 1 or 2. Again, it's a mental game, and it is about keeping moving, and it's also understanding your body for when you get out and how you get cold quickly, the after drop, when your cold blood starts moving around your body and you get colder after you get out. So I know I've got about 5 minutes to get changed before the shivers and everything starts.
Oh my goodness.
And I think what ice swimming is the safety side, and actually have an understanding of that.
Well, that brings us to a point that I wanted to make to ask you today. Here in about another month and a half, our river temperature will start dropping down significantly, and it goes into the low 60s, then into the 50s, which is cold for people around here. It even gets colder. You're kind of the queen of the cold water. So what are your tips and advice that you would give for people that are thinking about starting to swim cold water without a wetsuit? And what are some danger signs that they should be on the lookout for, or have someone with them watching for as they start to swim cold water?
I think the biggest thing for me is the safety side, but also if you want to especially if you're swimming in a river just now, keep swimming in it, because your body kind of acclimatizes as the river gradually decreases in temperature. Your body acclimatizes with that. So it's when you stop, like I went to Lanzarote for some training and then came back and swam in one of the lochs with one of our friends whose mum just laughed because I lasted 2 minutes and got out and was a shivering wreck when I'm normally in the longest, but it was because my body was used to the hot from the week before. So I would say gradually just staying in the water, dropping the amount of time that you're in, but letting your body adapt. And then it's also about not pushing your limits. If you're cold, sometimes I get in and think, am I cold, am I not, I'll just get out. And it's not being afraid to just get out after 5 minutes or get out after 2 minutes. It is that actually your body's starting to shut down. Safety says, get out. And you should never go alone. You should always have somebody looking out for you, because you can get so cold when you get out. It's also packing your kit bag so that as soon as you get out, your woolly hat's on the top of your bag to put on, then your towel, then your upper clothes, then your bottom clothes. So your clothes are in order so that as soon as you get out, you can quickly get changed without having to rake through your bags. So it's silly things like that. Earplugs is another bonus for in the cold. So there's lots of little things you could do, but I think gradually getting used to it when the river's getting colder is probably the top tip.
We always get those early, so we're talking to a lot of triathletes, and this podcast will be listening to them, but there'll be times when the water temperatures are probably around somewhere in that 15 to 18 degrees C for our very early season, open water swims. And granted, they're pretty short. They may only be a half a mile or a mile, but it's still shockingly cold if we're not used to it. So I definitely, the earplugs, I'm a huge fan of those for a lot of reasons, but I know they do help. So it's good to hear this advice, because it matter to us even here in sunny Tennessee.
I know that water quality is sometimes an issue at some of these swims as well. I recall your swim around Manhattan, you said that it kind of messed you up for a couple months after, just I guess maybe from some of the stuff that was in the water.
I wasn't well for a good while after. If it was water or not, I don't know, but yeah, probably was. The year I did it, there was a thunder and lightning storm, so the storm drains flooded, so you could only just imagine what we were swimming in. But yeah, if we choose to swim in these places, then it's the same with the wildlife. You're in the wildlife's home. If you swim in water that's possibly polluted, then there is a chance you get ill, but then it's an adventure in itself. So yeah, you kind of have to put that to the back of your mind and just get your job done.
It's interesting, as we've been talking, just to go through, it sounds like very many of the swims that you've done, they're not the sort of thing that you can plan on January 1st and say, well, in August I'm going to be doing this swim. Or you might have that plan, but then you get the weather that changes. So how much do you, I guess, have you learned to just be flexible? It sounds like that's been half of your swims. You've had 24 hours of notice or a few weeks of notice. How does that, I guess, vary from having the schedule all laid out and following it to the letter?
I think in the early days everything was planned out. Like everything was planned a year in advance. You know what you're doing. But then with time, I've probably kind of just got laid back, and it's just, whatever happens, happens, and you kind of have to go with it. It is good to have a plan. A lot of the big swims you have to book a year in advance to be able to get a good pilot, so you know that's there, but then it might not happen because of the weather, but you have to train just in case that you can get that go. And a lot of people probably struggle with that part in our sport is, the water might be poor, might be polluted so you can't swim, the conditions might be poor, there might be other reasons that we just can't go, and you just have to accept that because it is part of the sport and it's part of what we do. So you just kind of have to get your head around that's when you're going and hope that's when you go, and if it's not, you just have to reevaluate, reorganise, and then get ready to go again.
So that said, do you have anything on the drawing board right now? Is there anything you're planning for or hoping to get a phone call that says, hey, Colleen, get your stuff, get in the water?
After the Minch, I decided I was going to retire, and that was it, because that swim pushed me to my limits. And then I have so-called friends that keep on encouraging me to do other things. So there's one or two people who encourage me more. Blake, at his birthday, asked would I do something for him, and I was like, yeah, I'll do anything. What is it? And he asked me to swim Loch Lomond with him next year. And now Loch Lomond, I used to organise the race, which happens every second year. And that was always my excuse not to take part. And then I stopped organising it so I could take part, and I've just never done it. So it's one of the few swims in Scotland that I haven't done. So it will be totally awesome to be able to do it with Blake, but it's quite a scary thing because it's always quite nice that it's still there to do it, and then that's going to be another tick in the box.
Yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be my first really long distance swim. It's around 21 to 23 miles. So, and your last, and about your dad, you've got to talk about your dad for a little bit, because your dad's an absolute hoot, and I can't wait for him to be a part of this. I joked with Colleen, their last name's Blair, in the movie The Blair Witch Project. We were standing around and we were talking about Cork Endurance Week, which is, if you pull it up on YouTube and Google Hell Swim or Hell Week, it's this week out in Cork, Ireland, where this guy, Ned Dennison, just throws swimmers to the wolves essentially and tries to break them. And he's invited you a couple of times, and we joked around that your dad would do things that would scare Ned, and so we kind of came up with the idea and called it the Blair Witch Swim Project, to go to Scotland and and do this pretty awesome swim. But why don't you can you give us some funny things about your dad, or some comments about the old guy, and and how's he doing?
He's doing all right. He's slowed down. He used to row all my swims. So when I did Loch Ness, which is 23 miles long, I did it 21 years ago. He rowed the whole length with me in a small boat beside me. Him and Ian Reid just sat and rowed the whole day. So in the early days, yeah, he used to just row, but he'd hit me with the oars. If I can't swim straight, as Blake will probably vouch for, but Dad just would keep this course straight, and if I got hit by the oar, it was my own fault. So I've been hit over the head, I've been hit in the heels numerous times. You see his face going, oh no, did I hurt her this time? But his job is to keep me in a straight line, so if I get hit, it was my own fault. But yeah, he is a total superstar. He's always there. He's got a dodgy heart now, so he can't row. Not long after he got the okay and his heart shot back into rhythm, my mum allowed him to go in a boat where I train. And when we got out of eyesight, he changed from the engine to the oars and started to row. And I'm like, Dad, you're not allowed to row. I'll just keep rowing. And I'm like, Dad, you're not allowed to row. So eventually I fell out with him, swam to shore, and then was trying to climb up shore to hitchhike back to the beach, because I was refusing to swim because he was rowing. But that's the kind of support I have from him. And yeah, he's a stubborn person, but that's probably where I get it from. But he's always there.
Is he the one that has the story about the sea donkey? You want to tell about that one?
That's my mum, but I can be a bit of a moody little, when I'm swimming, especially to my dad. Before I start a swim, I could be quite nasty to my dad without even meaning to. And one swim I couldn't get a cruise, so my mum volunteered to go as my rescue. My dad said to my mum, whatever she says, just agree with her. Don't ever disagree with her. So we were swimming, I was having a bad swim. Dad jumped off the boat at an island and said to Mum, remember, whatever she says, agree with her. And I stopped and said, I'm swimming like a donkey, haven't I? Meaning for somebody to go, no, you're swimming all right. And my mum just turned around and went, yeah, you're swimming like a donkey. I was raging, just put my goggles on, took off like an idiot. My dad came back and went, where is she? What have you done? What have you said? And my mum was like, you said to agree. He went, what did you say? Am I swimming like a donkey? And my dad's like, you didn't say yes. You told me to say yes. And Dad was less than impressed with my mum, and that was the last swim my mum's ever been on my boat. Bless my poor mum, because she got a mouthful from me and my dad. But yeah, that's I'm swimming like a donkey moment.
Yeah, they warned me at SCAR. They came up on a boat and they said, if she starts getting in a mood, just lean over and call her a sea donkey. And then one of them had said, but make sure you move away really quick, 'cause she might flip you over. So we didn't test that out, thankfully.
No.
Well, Colleen, it's been a pleasure hearing all these crazy stories, and best of luck now, obviously, with Loch Lomond next year. That is next year coming up, correct?
Yes, 40th birthday year.
Yeah. Woo-hoo. Blake's going to be there, so it'll be a lot of fun. And it's been a pleasure talking to you and getting inside the mind of somebody who goes out and does these crazy things. So best of luck in all your future accomplishments, and we'll be looking forward to watching them.
Thank you.
Our thanks again to Colleen Blair, and we'll look to see some of you local people out at Bridges to Bluffs, Knoxville's open water swim this weekend. We'll talk to you again soon. Remember to subscribe, rate, and review on your favorite podcast app. And if we're not somewhere that you would like us to be to listen to the podcast, just let us know and hit us up at losttransition.com or via social media, and we'll do what we can to get posted up there. In the meantime, like, follow, tweet, do all those things on our social media, and check out the website, losttransition.com. Give us suggestions for upcoming guests so we can bring their stories to you. We'll talk to you again soon. For Lana Burrell, Derek Tingle, and Blake Ogle, I'm Chris Gerard. And until next time, may all your transitions be smooth.